On the surface, the passage from Mark seems to be prohibiting divorce. No doubt many of us have heard it preached that way and may have been hurt by interpretations like that. It is one of the more difficult texts to preach on, especially in our day. But what has actually happened is that the Pharisees already know Moses' command. Plus, they also know the two rabbinical schools of thought on the matter. So it's not like they don't know the answer to the question they're asking Jesus. They are indeed setting him up to test him. More accurately, this passage is about justice and about Jesus' expectation that we will recognize how those who have dependence upon us may be made vulnerable when that is withdrawn. In this case, a woman who has been divorced by her husband and has children, or may have children. In Moses' day, a man was allowed to divorce his wife for anything he wanted to. He could leave her abandoned with no other choice in this context but to remarry. This was Moses' rationale for adding the command to make sure that the woman and any children they had would be cared for. The certificate given by the husband was a way to ensure that her reputation would not be marred and her needs would be met. This passage is not speaking of the divorce that we experience today. It is not. Divorce today is painful. Some of you may have had that pain. Some of you may have had the joy of remarrying to find joy in that relationship as well. The Church of God can be a place where you find restoration and wholeness and healing from divorce and joy in remarriage, or moving back into a community of faith that loves you and supports you. One thing I want you to notice, and I didn't notice upon a second reading, is that in the Genesis lesson, it begins with God taking notice that Adam has no companion for him, like the rest of the animals. God created man and woman for each other to be bone of bone and flesh of flesh, to be the helpmate for each other, to be one of their own species, another human being with which to live through life. In fact, Adam's name in Hebrew, Adam, literally means from the earth. And if you recall, God created the animals from the earth, and then he created Adam from the earth, and Eve, wife, from the side. So along with the animals, all of us have our beginnings in the dirt, in the dust. Ever wondered why funerals they say earth to earth, ashes to ashes? Return back to that from which we came. Now, as part of the premarital counseling with new couples who are planning to be married, no matter the age, one of the things I found interesting and didn't understand was, why do you have to talk about former marriages? Because the church wants to ensure that those who have been divorced, that the other spouse is being cared for, that they have not left them out in the cold, that their children's needs are being cared for. I thought that was a way to bring hope and to ensure that part of the understanding of this passage was being followed. Because surely we know situations where that does not happen. It's important for us to know that the Church of God and God himself is merciful and gracious. And just as he saw that Adam needed a companion and created that for him, he also sees the need for the pain and the joy and the bliss that marriage can bring for us. He sees that community can bring the same pain, joy, and bliss as a spouse. And those who are widowed or single can enjoy the same relationships in a different way. Make no mistake, we are not sinners. We are not sinners because we are divorced and remarried. But we realize that joy and bliss can come in those secondary relationships. That those relationships can be both the love and the grace and the mercy that God intended from the beginning. We are all desperately sometimes trying to find another earth person, a Jesus with skin on, to feel the need for companionship and relationship that God created with us at the beginning. The relationship and intimacy we have with each other is a reflection on the intimacy and relationship we have with God. There are two ways culturally that people have thought about why God created man, humankind. One, I received a book called God's Trombones that was really wonderful. The first story is about creation and is set in this type of a poem. And it puts God as being lonely. So that towards the end of the poem, it says, I think I'll make me a man. God had made all the animals and creatures, did not have anything to connect with himself. Another way to look at it is, as I have talked about earlier, is that God saw that we had no companion. We needed relationship and made a woman from the man so that we would have a companion. You can also reason from the Genesis story that we are even in relationship with community, with the animals and with nature. And we are given the charge and the responsibility by God not to dominate them, but to care for them and to be good stewards of them, and to see ourselves as part of all creation, to live in harmony with one another, to live in harmony with the earth, in harmony with the animals. This means that we treat the earth well, we treat animals well, because God has given us responsibility for them. But just like we treat animals and our earth and all of creation, we are to treat our marriage, our spouses, and our friendships and our communities with the same understanding and the same care, maybe a little bit more. There will all be places of disappointment and hurt, but even then, we have a charge and a responsibility to make those things right, to provide hope, reconciliation, and wholeness when it is possible. Ponder the thought this week. Number one, that God created us with a need and a desire for relationship, but not leave that need unfulfilled, provided a way for us to fulfill that. Not only do we have companionship with animals and nature and all of his creation, just as we are to care for all of that, we are to make extra sure that we are faithful in caring for those who depend upon us. And in doing this, we will fulfill and reflect the love of God has for his creation. Amen.